This all must seem like deja vu for Kirk Lippold, the former USS Cole commander. A lot of you might not quite remember the Cole, and I'm sure the commander gets tired of me constantly explaining its significance, as he has tried to do with many American presidents, by the way, not only back then, but right through today. But that attack, led by terrorists, was the first warning sign we got that there was something we should be paying attention to. The commander was trying to make sure the Clinton administration at the time recognized that severity. It extended into the Bush administration. That attack left 18 U.S. sailors dead. And the commander has devoted his life to making sure nothing like that is repeated. Commander, always good to have you, and thank you. We learned a lot about that attack and lines that drew it even to Pakistan and these network of terrorists that almost work without borders. But now we're getting reminded of terror again as the Taliban takes hold of Afghanistan. It must seem eerie to you.
Neil, you're absolutely right, and it is deja vu, because when you think about it, the attack on USS Cole occurred, and really that was the first attempt by al-Qaeda to take away our nation's ability to defend our national security interests. Up until that point, they'd attacked buildings that house and represent U.S. interests, but that was an attempt to really take away our defensive abilities. And when you look at what occurred, the Interior Ministry in Yemen at the time is the one who gave pretty much free rein to al-Qaeda to move things around the country. The boat that was used in the attack, the explosives used in the attack, the ability to set up safe houses within Aden. What's scary now about the Taliban government is they have given one of their people, Sirajuddin Haqqani of the Haqqani Network, which is a U.S. designated terrorist organization, he is now the Interior Ministry, which means he controls who can move and go about the country and where, which means he can set up terrorist cells. He can set up terrorist training camps. He will allow them to operate and be able to get that critical things necessary to do terrorist strikes against us, which he has done for years in the killing of Americans in Afghanistan. That is a scary development in the building of this new government.
Commander, I know you've been asked this many times to go back to the day of that attack in October 2000. There were warnings and a lot of intelligence at the time that this was something that higher-ups feared could happen, down to an attack on a U.S. naval ship as early as July and August of that year. Just like there were warnings that terrorists could use commercial jets to attack the U.S. It seemed unfathomable then, up ahead of 9/11, unfathomable then. But what happens to these kind of warnings?
Neil, what really happens is the intelligence community tends to literally get so focused on what they think is probable instead of what might happen. The chances of us, we had never anticipated, prepared, or trained for a waterborne improvised explosive device. And while there were warnings that al-Qaeda was targeting Navy ships, most people took it as, okay, that's going to be, put it in the context of the time, like a Iranian bog hammer with 50 caliber machine guns and rocket-propelled grenades. What we need to be worried about today is that as people are starting to build out into Afghanistan, as this government is being formed, we need to start asking the question, who are they giving safe haven to? What are they allowing them to bring into the country that is going to do our nation and our citizens harm? How could they possibly carry it out? Because eventually we need to start following not only the money, but the capability as well. We need to track with these other Middle Eastern countries, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Iran, whether it's Saudi Arabia, who's donating money to support the Taliban and why, and what are they doing with that money that is going to be a danger to our nation. That's one of the key things that we really have to look at for the intelligence community now, and allow them to have the time as analysts to think outside the box.
I'm just curious, and if we can relive that day. I know it's tough, Commander, and this small glorified rubber boat dinghy, for lack of a better description. Did your men and women have any idea? And I learned in retrospect that a lot of vessels would come to and fro of U.S. ships parked in the region or docked in the region and think nothing of it. Relive that day and exactly what happened.
Well, Neil, what happened is, contrary to what a lot of press reports said, it was not a rubberized dinghy like a Zodiac boat that raced across the harbor and rammed us, which was a common reporting point. It, in fact, was a boat built to look like the garbage barges that came alongside the ship. We had contracted for 3, 2 had come out and picked up trash. The other 2, they had left. And what should have happened is one comes back out to do cleanup when the third boat that came out to us was actually looked just like the other garbage barges. Center console, outboard motor, 2 guys in it that even stood up and waved at the crew that morning. But as it went by, one of the sailors thought to himself, boy, something's not right. And that something not right in his mind's eye was, it sure is awful clean for a garbage barge. So they, in fact, had built the explosives into the boat. They had attempted an attack on another Navy ship 9 months before us that failed, and that's how that boat got inside the security perimeter next to us. It looked like a garbage barge. So absolutely stunning in how effective they were at pulling this off.
Did you have any idea what this would set in motion at the time, Commander? You were certainly warning about it.
Neil, all I can say is I knew it was going to be big. I knew that it was going to have huge ramifications for not only the United States Navy, I mean, initially, obviously, my crew, but also the United States Navy and how we approached putting ships into port from that point forward. It was going to have ramifications for the Navy. But the mindset of our nation at the time was non-state actors like terrorist organizations, like Al-Qaeda, are criminal elements, and we need to treat them like that. In retrospect, allowing that to happen, we did not comprehend that, in fact, Al-Qaeda had state sponsors that allowed them to be able to work in an environment where they could finance, where they could recruit, where they could get arms and train. And I think nowadays we need to look at that larger picture as a nation, and I'll flip it. I would even make the argument today that stop thinking of all these cyber criminals in terms of non-state actors in taking down with ransomware, malware, and others. We need to start looking at those as having state sponsors in Russia, North Korea, China, and start holding those nations accountable, because on the cyber front, businesses across the spectrum today are being affected by them, and eventually it is going to really affect not just our economic interests, but our national security interests as well.
Commander, thank you very much, and reminding us that sometimes evil's around us. We're just not picking up the cues. Commander Kirk Lippold, the man who was running the USS Cole at the time, and warned presidents of both parties, this is not over.